Members, when this House rose, we were debating the Tourism Development Bill. Member for Grosile.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise to give a short presentation and lend my voice to this debate and certainly endorse this Tourism Development Bill. I do this simply because, Mr. Speaker, I believe with every cell in my being that we are witnessing, we are seeing a team present in this House with their minister and staff, a historic team that will ensure that St. Lucia will never be the same again. I am convinced beyond conviction that with this tourism minister and his team, that what we are doing here today will ensure that every single sector in this nation is touched in a way that no other industry currently can have that same effect, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when we look at what this government has done, there is a clear strategy that any young individual in any community can gravitate towards and understand that there's an opportunity for you. Mr. Speaker, I remember before I was selected, the member for Castries East spoke about a youth economy. And I remember being intrigued by the notion of a youth economy. And at that time, there were so many doubts. There were so many haters, as we say in the sports fraternity, sipping on haterade. They could not see what a youth economy could mean for St. Lucia. But Mr. Speaker, in our first 2 years, we've seen the impact. We feel the vibration. We feel our young entrepreneurs coming to the fore, coming towards this government and saying, I have a contribution to this economy. And I will be a part of the development of St. Lucia. And so fast forward, Mr. Speaker, we see the Minister of Tourism and his team putting together this tourism development bill to ensure that these same young people can now be given the opportunity to gravitate towards the tourism industry and have immediate impact, Mr. Speaker. And as the Minister of Youth Development and Sports, I feel very encouraged that the incentives provided that for some reason was not seen by some individuals will definitely yield some big investments from our young people. And so, Mr. Speaker, I listened to some of the debates. I heard the member for Soufrière indicating that Soufrière was the heartbeat of St. Lucia's tourism industry. And as the member for Grosile, it had me questioning a little bit about what went behind that thinking. Because though tourists go towards Soufrière, the bulk of them, the bulk of the activities, the logistics, the entertainment, which is the heartbeat, the vibration, is at a place called Grosile Friday night. And Mr. Speaker, this is the area where any Caribbean country or any place in the world, you talk about coming to St. Lucia, you must stop at the Grosile Friday night. And so, Mr. Speaker, this Minister of Tourism, along with his PS, who I know for a very long time, went through a torrid time with me for the first 18 months, simply because I knew that Grosile is the heartbeat of our tourism sector, and a proposal for the development of our water shores, our recreational center, was on the table. But Mr. Speaker, I did not stay there and just decide as a minister, an MP, that I was just going to go and put up a structure with no approvals from DCA. I did not say to my family and to my friends that I'm going to allow you to manage this recreational area. I'm not a... I don't know. Mr. Speaker, I knew very well that the constituents of Groseley voted for me to be a responsible member of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. A responsible member of Parliament. And so the ministry went through the painstaking process, Mr. Speaker, of ensuring that we had DCA approval, planning approval, and all the approvals that we need. And now, Mr. Speaker, I can proudly say that the Groseley recreational area is sprouting very nicely, Mr. Speaker. And we're expecting our tourists to continue to enjoy the heartbeat of St. Lucia's tourism product, to recreate with our people in the community, and to chill, mingle, enjoy some food, enjoy our music, and enjoy what it is to be a Groseley, a je Groseley, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is the work of this current government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is well known that the population of Groseley, the entertainment in Groseley, and what Groseley really is, the entertainment hub, requires that tourists could really enjoy not just the sun and the sea, but enjoy my constituency, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, despite the fact that we had a tourism guru who likes to indicate that he was director of tourism at one point, and then became minister of tourism for 5 years, and then prime minister for another 6 years. By my calculation, more than 13, 14 years at the helm of decision making for tourism. Mr. Speaker, not one hotel was built in my constituency during his tenure, Mr. Speaker. Not one room, not one during his tenure, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am indeed proud to stand here as a parliamentary rep for Groseley and get excerpts from an article written on the international media about Destination by Hyatt being constructed as we speak in the community of Casabah, Mr. Speaker. Of course, Mr. Speaker, I am indeed proud that in that same article they speak to this hotel being open by the end of 2024, Mr. Speaker. Less than 2.5 years of government, Mr. Speaker, governance. A proper hotel, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under this Minister of Tourism, we hear of the thrill and the prospects of Mount Pima, Mr. Speaker. Again, Mr. Speaker, activities that will spur economic growth, employment, and, Mr. Speaker, provide other persons opportunities to come to the beautiful constituency of Groseley, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for many years, we spoke about how every sector affects other sectors, Mr. Speaker. And as somebody who grew up in Groseley, who played football in Massad on the Groseley playing field, and walked through the length and breadth of that constituency, it was heartbreaking when we came in and there was no proper Groseley police station. And you would say, why would I speak today about a Groseley police station, Mr. Speaker? When you have the tourism hub, the logistics, the economic activities happening in your constituency, and you have tourists, thousands and thousands of tourists in your community on a daily basis, attending Friday nights, you know the importance of a Groseley police station, Mr. Speaker. And just as I said, Mr. Speaker, everything that this government does, there's synergy. There is reason. There is this symbiotic putting together of our agencies, Mr. Speaker. And so we saw the Honorable Prime Minister commence the construction of the Groseley police station, and we are certainly hoping that we can continue to have more and more policemen comforted by the amenities there to provide comfort and security to our tourists, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am indeed thrilled by what we are doing here today, Mr. Speaker. We did some historic things today, Mr. Speaker, and the expectation by a number of my peers was that I was going to go deep into it. I did not. But for the member of Miku South, he could not resist the temptation of surreptitiously going back into what we did in terms of the removal of VAT on sports equipment. And so since he had the notes already in his book, he went on to mention soufre and went on to lecture and indicate to me that he knows how to certify the soufre mini stadium, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me just hasten to say that, Mr. Speaker, Caroline Kazmi and Stephen Gustav, they gave birth to a very humble young man. I always seek counsel, Mr. Speaker. And I always seek counsel from the experts. And some of my peers sometimes, even in the cabinet, wonder sometimes why this has not happened. But it simply is because I want to make sure that the advice that I'm given is coming from an area of authority, from intelligence, and it's coming from an individual that has had experience in doing the right thing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Soufre Mini Stadium, it was built on the premise, one of the premises was that the majestic pitos in the back would breed some good sports tourism in the community. Mr. Speaker, I can't disagree with that. But we had a government that boasted of having a former national 400, 800, 200 meter sprinter. They boasted that in their cabinet, they had a former national cricketer. They boasted in the cabinet that the individual trying to unseat the current prime minister was a national netballer, national volleyballer, and of course, tennis player. They boasted that the one at that time from Dennery South was a national sprinter. They boasted having the best former athletes in the cabinet, Mr. Speaker. Yet, with him as a former national basketballer, as the leader, as their leader, Mr. Speaker, they oversaw the worst sports project in St. Lucia's history, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Grizzly, let me remind you that the bill before us is the Tourism Development Bill.
Mr. Speaker, he opened the bill, he opened the door when he said that Soufre, the mini stadium, which is a sports tourism investment, was not being done properly, Mr. Speaker.
Member, if you're going to mention Soufre and the stadium, you're going to tie it into your presentation.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
But remember that the bill before
totally
us
agree, Mr. Speaker.
is the Tourism Development Bill.
Totally agree, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, when we have a venue that we are trying to attract tourists from all over the world, you must get certification, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, the worst ever sports infrastructure built, Mr. Speaker, had no certification. And today, under his watch, and today, he claims that he has the answer for certifying the Soufre Mini Stadium so that we can bring in the tourists in a certified venue to enjoy our sportsmen and women, Mr. Speaker. Here are the facts, Mr. Speaker. In November last year, we had a representative from Mondo come to St. Lucia. Mondo is the global organization that lays tracks. Visited St. Lucia, and in their report, they indicated, one, the long jump and triple jump runways were built with a shortage in size. We had a national sprinter in the cabinet, Mr. Speaker. The Freud events are missing due to having synthetic grass in field, Mr. Speaker. The issues prevent the track from being WA2 certified, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and you come in today to try and vaguely people and lecture them, Mr. Speaker, and say to me, you can tell me how to get it certified. when I, as a minister, have already engaged the stakeholders. So this is the options they gave to me, and I don't know if you want me to listen to him or them. Option 1, leave everything as is and get compliance letter from WA for the oval only. So it means that we took a track, we took a field where you could play football, cricket, you could have long jump, triple jump, shot put, all events. Option 1, leave everything as is and get the compliance letter from WA for the oval only, which means the only event we can have it that is certified for our tourists to come and enjoy would be the events running around the field, Mr. Speaker. Only the track. No long jump, no triple jump. They cannot come there and enjoy no shot put, no discus, none of those things. Option 2, demolish the long jump and triple jump runways on the D area. Demolishing it may be costly. Consider building one new long jump and triple jump runway with correct measurements. With correct measurements, consider building it with correct measurements adjacent to the ovals. And if you visit any territory in the world, any territory in the world, the long jump and the triple jump is adjacent. Anywhere in the world. But we sat here for 6 years. We had the brilliant minds that can lecture us today. And not one of them said, you all are going the wrong way. The blind leading the blind. Mr. Speaker, it goes on to say, consider building one new long jump and triple jump runway with correct measurements adjacent to the oval. Once you get the area square footage, we can give you estimates on the Mondo track surface. So that's the recommendation. Mr. Speaker, that's the only recommendation that makes sense to the people and to the athletes of St. Lucia. We already know that. We already got the recommendations, Mr. Speaker. We are almost into a new financial year, and we, the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports, will ensure that we do what we must to correct all his errors, all their errors, so that the tourists from London, from Canada, and the rest of the world can enjoy our facility, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, when I hear some of what is being said sometimes, Mr. Speaker, I choose to, at times, be quiet. But we must let our young people know what the vision is, Mr. Speaker. We have a bill right now, Mr. Speaker, that works to the benefit of a wide cross-section of St. Lucians. The Airbnb market, Mr. Speaker. The ordinary individual on the beach, Mr. Speaker. Those hoteliers who are up and coming, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, an interesting point was made earlier that our local businesses trust this government, Mr. Speaker. And we see Bay Gardens expanding, Mr. Speaker, ahead of this World Cup, expanding, Mr. Speaker. We're seeing rooms being built all over the north, Mr. Speaker. They will be able to get the incentives under this bill to further develop their businesses, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, our biggest sports tourism activity this year may be the World Cup, the Cricket World Cup. And so I look forward to the continued synergy between the Ministry of Infrastructure, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Tourism, to ensure that when people come to our shores, they get the best product they've ever seen, Mr. Speaker. And we've delivered this before, and will continue to deliver it to them, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this government is on the right track, and so I must support this tourism enhancement bill. I thank you.
Member for Castries South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at this point, I think it is appropriate that I provide some responses to some of the issues that were raised during the earlier debate by various members. I want to start off, Mr. Speaker, by expressing thanks to all my colleagues who stood up and spoke in support of the bill and expressed their support for it. I think the member from Strozel, Salty West on the other side, I'm not sure if I heard him right, but I think he did support the bill, and I think it is quite gracious of you, and the contribution you made in terms of suggesting that maybe not in the legislation, but in our action plan moving forward, that we encourage properties to ensure the upkeep of beaches and other sites and attraction elsewhere. Is quite worthy. It's something that is being done to some measure, and certainly we can encourage it to be done a lot more than is being done. I heard some members, and certainly the case of the members from Soufrière Fossa Jacques and Grosley, spoke about where the real heartbeat of tourism is. And as a friend of mine said to me, the hat has two sides, the left and the right, so Soufrière can take the left and Grosley can take the right. And both of them can have an equal claim to being the heartbeat of the tourism industry in St. Lucia. And Mr. Speaker, I think the Prime Minister, in speaking, pointed us to some fundamental issues and his own experiences and recollection of the tourism industry and his own vision and desire to see a tourism industry that can best connect with the people of St. Lucia, can best, reflect the aspirations of the people of St. Lucia. And he made a very powerful statement, which I will repeat shortly. The member from Castle Southeast, of course, I recall him making the emphatic statement in relation to certification. He really described the approach that we want to use to certification, and that is the ministry saying to all tourism service providers that we will hold your hand and we will lift you up and ensure that you reach the necessary standards of being world-class, which is the dream that we all have for our destination. Mr. Speaker, the member from Miku South is a rather interesting representative in this House. He served in the Parliament of St. Lucia for 5 years as a Minister of Tourism. He was a senator for 5 years. During those 5 years, for each year, the honorable member from Castries North, who was then Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, went to extraordinary lengths to ensure he had all the resources necessary to transform the tourism industry. The member from Castries North will tell you he got $50 million a year allocated to the tourist board alone, not the Ministry of Tourism. $50 million to restructure, reorganize, redesign tourism in this country. During those 5 years, not one hotel room was built in this country. Nothing. Not one heritage site was built in this country. Nothing. Instead, he spent millions providing guarantees to certain airlines. And I can tell you, when a former Minister of Tourism, Lon Theophilus, came in, millions of dollars were owed to certain airlines. Millions. It took them about 3 years to pay out that debt. 3 years. The $50 million he got a year for 5 years. $250 million allocated. But he stands in this House and he has every answer for every problem in the tourism industry. He even speaks of how he wanted the hotel occupancy tax to be paid in a special account so they could fix up sidewalks and whatnot. He did not fix up one sidewalk when he was Minister of Tourism, not even in Rodney Bay. But he started Rodney Bay Village. No. Explain that to me. It's an enigma. It really is. How can someone who knows everything, especially about tourism, does nothing? Is it a psychological derangement? What is it? Is it an intellectual dishonesty? How can you have the answers for every single thing and you did nothing? I'm still trying to come to terms with that kind of thinking. And I want to go through some of them. How, Mr. Speaker? You were a former police officer, you used to profile persons. You probably can help me understand it, Mr. Speaker. How does that happen? And then you become Prime Minister for 5 years.
Dragged into a 6 year.
Into a 6 year. You did not build one hotel room. In fact, you lost hotel investments.
You walk out of there.
Had to pay range almost $40 million. How do you have all the answers but no actual work ever been done? Explain that to me. Explain that to me. Now, I love listening to the member because in a way it almost becomes comical. But how do you explain this? 5 years as Prime Minister, 5 years as Minister of Tourism, and you cannot show slate for what you've done. He still wants us to be convinced that what he did in relation to Cabot and DSH were the most brilliant investment decisions in this country. He is not repentant. He is not going to say to the people of St. Lucia, I made a mistake. I should not have given away your 1,000 acres of land. I should not have given concessions that did not exist on the books, and pass a special law to give Cabinet the right to give those concessions. The special amendment I'm speaking about, you may not even recall that you passed a special amendment in this house. There again, but you did. You did. So, Mr. Speaker, how it is that you are still so convinced that those are the most brilliant decisions, that DSH was the best thing that ever happened to St. Lucia? Explain that to me. Explain it. And then he speaks of Sandy Beach and how I stopped community tourism on Sandy Beach. I'll say a few things about community tourism. But I said I did have the photos of Sandy Beach and what they had proposed for Sandy Beach. And he said that's not true. And I will circulate it as a document of the House with your permission, Honorable Speaker. How is it that someone who signed an agreement, took out photos, had it live on television for the entire nation to see, can so boldly stand up and say that it never happened? How? Now, I know the member from Strozel, or even himself, will say they had abandoned those plans and they gave Invest St. Lucia a new mandate to come up with alternative plans. But I will share something with this Honorable House. One, you remember recently he boasted that DSH was going to take us to court and sue us. DSH didn't reveal it to the world because the two parties were talking, trying to resolve differences, but he announced it to the world. And he announced it the weekend after he held a UWP fundraiser in one of the tents at DSH. You remember this?
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, you remember it? So, he, Mr. Speaker, signed an agreement with DSH, and one of the reasons that DSH is asking or stating their discontent and they being aggrieved is because a supplementary agreement was signed with him to allow them to do this to Sandy Beach. That's a so he signed it. He signed it. And DSH, in their statement of discontent, is saying they signed an agreement to do this to Sandy Beach and it was not fulfilled. Imagine that. He signed it. He signed to do this. And he stands in the House today and says he knows nothing about this. Now, tell me.
Who signed it?
He signed it. I can't tell you whether the member from Strozel Saltibus signed it as well. I know he signed the first one. But I cannot tell you thereafter.
He signed both of them.
He signed both of them. Right? Yeah. So, explain to me, Mr. Speaker, how can you stand up in this House, knowing that you signed an agreement with DSA to do this to Sandy Beach, to deny it. Even when I told you I had the photos, you still denied it. And then you accused me of stopping a community tourism project on Sandy Beach. Is this a community tourism project? How?
Member for Miku South.
Don't walk out there.
Member for
Is it
Miku South.
order or
Speaker, I
elucidation?
stand on a point of order. The
What is your
member
point of
misleading
order?
the House.
In what way is the member misleading the House?
Mr. Speaker, this was a presentation that was made to cause the government to want to give this piece of property. Okay? Sorry, go ahead,
Member
Mr.
for
Speaker.
Miku
My
South.
apologies.
Okay. If you stand on a point of order and say the member is misleading the House, just say, what did he say to cause him to mislead the House?
That's what I'm saying.
Go ahead.
So I'm saying that the member is suggesting that this was a contracted deal. A presentation was made in order for them to get this piece of land. Okay? We gave them Il Parata and not this piece of land. And the member knows well that by the time he got into office, all the plans had been drawn up, Mr. Speaker, for all the land behind the concrete road. Okay? Subdivision was done, Mr. Speaker, and you, when you drive in the south, you'll see the two signboards are still up there talking about that particular project. So how he wants to bring anything in with regards to DSH, he can show as many pictures as he wants to, but the fact is when he got into office, the deal that was on the table was for Invest in Lucia to develop that land, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, member. You said that the member was misleading the House. What I gathered from what the member said from this picture was that, as you rightfully said, a presentation was made. So I don't take it that the member was misleading the House.
I have no difficulty, Mr. Speaker, if that's what he said. But the reality, he's giving the impression, Mr. Speaker.
No, it's what he said. Is not. We cannot. I can only deal with what the member said. I cannot deal with what you think he's inferring. The member said that a presentation was made, and then they made mention of the concrete road and what happened, and he showed the picture to show exactly what the presentation showed. I cannot take it to mean that what you're saying. The member did not see it. So, member for Castries South, continue.
Would you suggest
Okay,
that the
so,
member is
Sorry,
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
So hold on, member for Castries South.
The member is insinuating that this is what the deal was and that I lied and that there was never a deal for Invest in Lucia to do the Sandy Beach site. And that's all I'm asking for. So two can coexist. I have no difficulty with that. But please do not give the impression that when he got into office, that the Sandy Beach site was in the possession of Invest in Lucia. All the designs and everything else were done, and it was in fact he and his the minister decided not to proceed with that project.
Member, again, I'll say the member for Castries South, if my memory serves me well, said that you said there was a community tourism project for Vieux Fort, and the picture circulated document that was made a document of the House said that does not indicate that this is a community tourism project. My role is that I don't think that the member is misleading the House. So thank you. Continue, member for.
So, Mr. Speaker, I didn't want to go deeper. I did not want to go deeper into this matter. I did not want to. I wanted to make my points and to move on. But I want you to listen to this, Mr. Speaker. The member from Miku South is saying that I, as minister, decided to stop. Now, I can say for the record, I have never been part of such a decision. I have never. I am not aware that any of my staff at the ministry participated in such a decision, and I am not aware that Invest got any such instructions from anyone to do so. And one of the reasons why I can say so quite clearly is because I never even had any reason to consider what was proposed for Sandy Beach, and the reason is clear. And the Prime Minister can tell you. When we came into office, one of the first meetings we had was with DSH and the principals of DSH. And they said to us quite clearly what their thinking was on the DSH development, including the fact that they had been given those lands for that development and it was taken away from them. And the member from Castries East can say so. So DSH is saying to us that we signed an agreement with the last government. They gave us copies of it, told us that they would have an issue with the government of St. Lucia because it was given to them and taken away from them. At that point, there's nothing we have to consider about Sandy Beach anymore. In fact, they went on to tell us a lot of things about the way your government dealt with them. A lot of things. But you will stand up and accuse people. You will stand up and accuse people. And I'll tell you, you have a very nefarious reputation. I can tell you that. But let's not go there today. Today is a glorious day for us. So seriously, I'm not going to expose you on a day like today. But we meet investors who tell us a lot of things. At that meeting, they told us a lot of things about your government and how it operated. But don't get me started today. Don't let me get started. Because there's a reason why you dislike GPH, but we'll come to that at another time. Mr. Speaker, today is not the day for this. Mr. Speaker, you will stand here and accuse me of stopping a community tourism project on Sandy Beach when you sign an agreement giving away Maria Island and Sandy Beach, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, allow me to move on.
Mr. Speaker, again, on members misleading.
Hold on. Member for Castries South, can you see? Member for Miko South, what is your point of order?
The member is misleading the House. There was never agreement, Mr. Speaker, to give anybody Maria Island. So I would like him to withdraw that statement. There's no truth to that matter.
Thank you, member for Miko South. Member for Castries South, member is saying that there is no. You just made mention that he gave away Maria Island or he sold Maria Island. He's saying that there was never any deal to sell Maria Island.
You know, Mr. Speaker, the member stood up, accused me of stopping a project and said all kinds of things about me, the minister and his reputation and whatnot. Blues, I take it. My shoulders are broad, but you like a shinya. You only call a shinya popot.
Member for
like a shinya. You understand? You come here, you accuse people. I'm in public life and I expect that I'll be accused from time to time. I will be abused. I take my blows and I move on. And I just give you the truth.
Member for Miko South.
I didn't hear you.
Member for Miko South. For Castries South. The member for Miko South stood on a point of order, and he made mention that you indicated that Maria Island was given away. I said that that never happened under his watch, and if you cannot prove that he gave away Maria Island, I would appreciate if you can withdraw that statement.
Mr. Speaker, I can go and stop this House and go and get the documents in my office to show you the supplementary agreement that was signed. But that's not necessary. The point has been made. If you want me to withdraw, I will withdraw. But I will not ask you to withdraw what you said about me. I will not, because it just exposes the character that you are. But you know what? Let's move on.
Member for Castries South, can you withdraw the statement?
Mr. Speaker, I've told you I've withdrawn it.
No, you say if you want me to withdraw, I'll withdraw. You've not said that you withdraw your statement.
Mr. Speaker, I've withdrawn.
Thank you very much, member for Castries South. Carry on.
Mr. Speaker.
Carry on.
Mr. Speaker, I respect the presiding officer. But but I will tell you, your days are short-lived up there. Because you will be sorted very shortly. And you will not have the luxury anymore to stay to sing. But anyway, on a serious note, Mr. Speaker. So let's move on. Enough of this, Mr. Speaker, because I can say a lot more about DSH and Carbot, Mr. Speaker. But, let's move on. So, the member from Miko South in his presentation says that we are pretending that we are doing something new. This is not new. And that as far back as when he was Director of Tourism, there was the Let's Be the Best campaign. and they wanted every gas attendant, every ordinary person to be part of the whole tourism construct. Now, he may be right. I won't contest that. But the fundamental difference between you and how you view tourism and how we do is that we do not see St. Lucians as just being subjects in the industry. We see them as being active participants, benefiting from it and owning it, Mr. Speaker. That is fundamental. That is fundamental. Because for you, St. Lucians' participation in the industry is not the same value we place at it. We have two different ideological and philosophical concepts. So you think of, let's be the best, because St. Lucians are supposed to smile and, just be how do you call it? Not servants of the industry. We want St. Lucians to own it. We want visitors to come in to invest, to make profits, but we want St. Lucians also to invest and make profits. So there's a fundamental difference. You did not invent, community tourism. Why do you want to come and pretend that you were the one who invented it? You were the one who invented community tourism in St. Lucia? I mean, come on, let's get real. I can say to you, Mr. Speaker, that this tourism development bill is not my work, it's not cabinet's work. This has been a journey. It's an evolution of the tourism industry, Mr. Speaker. Many individuals have contributed to the development of this construct. It did not start with me. I know very little about tourism, very little. I'm not a guru. The member of Miku South, that's the guru. Because he told us about he working with Chris Blackwell, and he built Miami Beach, and he did Jamaica, and all those things he did, Mr. Speaker. I cannot boast of that. I can't. But I know I'm a fast learner. I know I ask a lot of questions, and I know how to work as part of a team. And I know I have a team in cabinet and in the ministry that is pushing the industry forward, Mr. Speaker. So I will not stand here and boast that community tourism started with me or anything like this. The member spoke of community tourism, and what is needed is investment in community tourism. We should not just be talking about it, we have to invest in it. And I wondered, is something wrong again with the member from Miku South? And then I remembered at the last sitting, he walked out, like a real shinya. He walked out. He did not stay and face it. And therefore, he may have missed the debate that we had on the borrowing for community tourism and all the projects we'll be investing in. He would have missed all the discussions about the plans we have for more investment. He would have missed the report I gave about what we have done so far. And then he would have fully appreciated that we are investing massively in community tourism. Massively. So when he speaks about his investment we need, we are displaying investment in community tourism. We are the ones that passed the legislation. We are the ones that started the institution, not him. Let me remind you, he was Prime Minister. $5 million was spent on community tourism, or at least part of it allocated and part of it spent. Show us the track record of what did you do in 5 years with that $5 million. Show us. When you speak of investing and lecturing us, you had a chance 5 years. And I heard yesterday in the Senate, the former Minister of Tourism was grandstanding and showing slides, as usual, showing slides. I have a simple message for him. Simple. And I'm not going to engage in no big argument with any petulant child, because that's how he behaves. But I'm not going to do that. But then he goes on and he says a lot of things. All I can say to him, when you speak to the people in ancillary canneries, they say and they express their disappointment that the raffin tour that's offered was supposed to be a community tourism project, and it did not end up as a community tourism project. And that at some point the full story will come out. And who is the person behind it? Who is the person promoting it? Who claims to be in charge of it? And I will also say, the last time I went to Ancillary, somebody told me, go at the bamboo rafting site, and all the tables and chairs and food servers and things I see there, all of those things were bought under community tourism. Now, I will ask the ministry to give me an account on this. I have not done it yet. But if you want to step out of line with your accusations...
On a point of order, the member is not in the House. We're not supposed to be making aspersions against anybody who's not a member of the House, Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead, member.
You want me to say it, Mr. Speaker? Yeah. Now, let me be very careful with my words. Very careful with my words. I said yesterday in the Senate, he said a lot of things. And as a member of the Parliament, he will have an opportunity to present an account of what has happened. Because, you know, we can govern and we can stand here and we can debate, we can argue. But when people start making accusations and they cross that line, they have to be made to account. So when we're going to talk about community tourism, I have never asked the ministry to give me any detailed report on what has happened with the $5 million and what was done in community tourism. I accepted we have to move on. What was there, we will build on it, we will improve it, and we'll move forward. The same project in Ancillary Canaries would tell me we had to look for an additional $1 million to get a sewer system in place so it can become functional. And you're telling me you master planners, master executors of projects? Seriously? But we were prepared to let all those things go by. Let all those things go by and let's move on. Make sure the community gets what they need and they can benefit from it. And forget those scenes. 3 years, you had 5 years.
6 years.
You had 6 years. 6 years and you did not even do it properly. You did not even do it properly. Mr. Speaker.
How many hotels you built?
You know, the member from Mico South said, what we really need to make St. Lucia successful, what we really need to make St. Lucia successful is to have brand St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, everywhere you go, people will tell you, we present brand St. Lucia. Export, Tourism Authority, CIP, Invest. We go around, we promote brand St. Lucia. Export under the Minister from Commerce, the member for Soufrière, for Saint-Jacques. And we present brand St. Lucia. Brand St. Lucia is not even new to us. It is something that's been spoken about for years. The first time I heard it being expressed in terms of how we implement it was under Dr. Kenny Anthony. You know, that's how far back that goes. It's not new to us, and maybe somebody else even before might have mentioned it. We will not proclaim that we are the owners of that idea, but the fact is we are doing it. You had 5 years or 6 years as Prime Minister, and you did not do it. So yes, the brand St. Lucia idea is an excellent one. We will build on what we've done before. We will continue to work together, and we'll continue to promote St. Lucia as a special experience, whether in investment, in tourism, in CIP, and in whatever field of endeavor, because we believe it is the right way. So thank you very much for affirming what we all accept. But please do not come and pretend that that's what we should do, and we're not doing it. We are doing it. The member said what we really need in St. Lucia. He gave a long pontification about, you know, flights and rooms and what's most important. I mean, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I want to say to him, I recall sitting across there, and his first budget address, he spoke about all the hotels that will be built in St. Lucia. First policy statement. And then we laughed among ourselves. And we were reminded that during the by-election campaign in Mico, he promised he would have built, how many hotels, member from Castries is? 7 hotels. He promised that he, as Minister of Tourism, would build 7 hotels in Mico, he in Mico, he would build 7 hotels in Mico. 7 hotels. He did it during the by-elections in Mico, and not one was built. Maybe in Mico North, but not in Mico South. It wasn't built there. But Mr. Speaker, as Prime Minister, he stood up right there there. And he said how many hotels he will build over the next 5 years. He, in an interview with Rick Wayne, his good friend, my friend too, but his good friend, said he was bringing $2 billion worth of investment the following year in St. Lucia. US. Wasn't easy? US. Me, none. But he said that of the hotels you said you were going to build in your first policy statement, how many were built? None. I'm glad you say none. Of the $2 billion investment you will bring in the following year. And when he said 2 billion, Rick Wayne actually said, 2 billion? He said, yeah, 2 billion. You know. So that's what he said he would build. I can say to you, honorable member from Miku South, that many of the projects which were stalled, some of them started under Kenya Anthony. I don't want to give my friend from Roselle some more statement. Go ahead. You know, some of the projects that were stalled, we've engaged the developers. We've put them back on track. In the case of Carbot, we express our views on the development, what our challenges were, what our thoughts were, and we've tried to reorient it to make sure it serves the benefit of the people of St. Lucia. So we have tried, Mr. Speaker, and we've also reached out to, we've gotten new investors that will be investing substantially in St. Lucia. That's, Mr. Speaker. And over the next few months, St. Lucians will see a number of projects that will be started in St. Lucia. So you would have spent 5 years as Minister of Tourism, 6 years as Prime Minister, and not built one hotel room. Galaxy. Can I say something to the Honorable House about Galaxy? You know, there we go. You don't want me to say it? Okay, I would say it. But Mr. Speaker, you know, everything he touches fails. Fails, Mr. Speaker. But he stands there and he lectures us. Lectures us. He lectures the member from Grosile, Minister of Sports, about the certification of the Soufre Stadium. How do you have the gall to do this when this has been a total disaster? Don't you have any shame of people resurrecting all your skeletons? You don't have shame. Okay, fine. So, Mr. Speaker, you know, Mr. Speaker, maybe the member from Miku South should learn to just leave some things alone and allow us to continue to develop the country as best as we can. Because I honestly thought the member would come here and give a real, robust, rigorous analysis of the bill and shortcomings and where we can improve it, whatnot. And I must admit I was a little bored during the presentation because there was nothing of substance in terms of the response to the bill. So maybe you should just leave those things alone, Mr. Speaker, and please advise him to do so. Mr. Speaker, I want to say something about two things before I finish. Two. The incentives. And he raised an issue about, and I know there's a lot of talk going around about it, 50% incentives, and there'll only be 50%, you know, incentives given. And maybe the fault was mine. I didn't explain it properly, but you can appreciate the amount that I had to say, and I was trying to be quick and gloss over as many of the issues as possible. So I didn't give it sufficient attention to explain it. And Mr. Speaker, the legislation provides for generality in terms of, you know, what's required for somebody to get concessions. It speaks of the different schedules, whatnot, but it doesn't go into the details. Those things are left for the regulations. The regulations are not in force until the legislation has been passed and the minister signs the order for the regulations to come into effect. So, first of all, his suggestion that this piece of legislation is repealing existing legislation and there will be nothing existing is wrong. It's wrong. There will be a date by which the new legislation come into force. So until then, the old still apply. And when the new legislation comes into force, the minister signs the order for the regulations that will accompany the new legislation. If he looks at clauses 154, 155, 156, it speaks of the transitioning phase, and it gives you clear guidance on those issues, if he looks at it. So anybody who's applying for concessions between now and the date when the new legislation comes into force will be treated as if they applied under the old. It's in the legislation. It's very clear. Apparently he didn't read it.
Member for Miku South.
Again, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to be happy to be corrected, but on a point of order, the member is misleading the House. In the document itself, Mr. Speaker, on page 88, section repeal, 155, the following acts are repealed: the Tourism Incentives Act, the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act, and the Tourism Levy. It then goes on, Mr. Speaker, and says the savings, what's going to be held over. It says from the commencement of the subject of the act, incentives issued under the Tourism Incentives Act. So incentives that were already issued, Mr. Speaker, or Tourism Stimulus and Incentive Act, Cap 1503, continue to be valid for the period for which the incentives were approved. The rate of tourism levy, so it says nothing about that, Mr. Speaker. So I would certainly
It says nothing about what?
It says nothing about the regulations being held over. It says that the acts have been repealed, and when it speaks of the savings, this is page 88, okay, it only speaks to incentives that were given, that they now continue, they're grandfathered in would be the term. But there's nothing here that specifically says that the schedule of incentives that existed under those acts are being saved.
I don't know. Maybe I don't understand what you said really. Any concessions you got under the old act, you will continue to enjoy it. Yes.
That's not what the member said. What the members, may I, Mr. Speaker, I apologize. Mr. Speaker, what the member said is that the schedule of the regulations would have continued to be in play. There's nowhere in that document.
Who said so?
No.
You did.
Who said so?
So you're telling me that you've repealed the act, and exactly
It's
what I
not
said is
repealed.
100% accurate. In repealing the act, then the incentives as we know them have been repealed. So if I want to apply for new incentives tomorrow, what guides me? Where is it?
Mr. Speaker, I will read for you again. You read 157. Have you read clause 157? Read 157. Read it aloud so all of us can hear. Read it aloud.
Member for
my
Castro South. You will speak through the speaker and you will not give orders
Okay,
to
Mr.
other
Speaker.
members of this honorable house. Go ahead, member.
So, Mr. Speaker, the Act provides for persons who have made, in other words, okay, let me put it differently. Honorable member, let me try and explain it differently to you. So, if you look at clause 1, the Act shall come into force on a date to be fixed by the minister by order published in the Gazette. So until then, the old legislation continues. No?
Mr. Speaker, may I?
Mr. Speaker.
Member,
Mr. Speaker,
what are you standing on? What are you standing
on the point of order, that we're
What is the point of order?
that we're still misleading the House.
In what way is the member misleading the House?
Sorry, Mr.
In what way is the member misleading the House?
Because
Or what
the
have you
member
said to
is
mislead
making
the House?
reference to section 157 and suggesting that that section answers the question. It doesn't. If you read what it says here, an application made for incentives. So if there's an application that's in place today that has not been approved, right? The Tourism Stimulus Investment Act that has not been finally determined before the commencement of the act is deemed to have been made under this act.
Right.
So what? But if I'm going to
What do you
apply
mean-
under this
what do you-
act,
what
Mr.
do you think
Speaker,
this
if I'm
act
going
will
to
mean
apply
the
under
new
this
act?
act, that's what I'm saying. Where are the details? If I have 10 rooms, what can I expect to get? The same schedule that the member is speaking of, which I agree. And that's what I look for. I said there's nothing in the schedules that highlight specifically what are going to be the incentives we get. What the Prime Minister read, Mr. Speaker, was headings. But in the old act, it says if in fact you have anywhere between 10 and 50 rooms, this is how much corporate tax you're going to get away, this is how much of the other taxes that you're going to be not have to pay, and also the VAT. But there's nothing here, there's nothing in the schedule. So what it means is exactly what I said, Mr. Speaker. A person is to apply, put it in, and with no expectation or understanding what they're going to get. That's a level of discretion that should not be allowed. That's all.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, can I, in the interim moving forward,
Yes.
we'll refer you to the legal persons and they will, I don't want to go back and forth with the honorable member on interpretation. No, Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead, member.
Yeah, can I go ahead? Okay.
That has not been finally determined.
Determined under this.
So
Yeah.
if it's finally determined, then you think, but if it's not been finally determined, you deem it to have been under the act. Thank you for telling me about that. No, but you just admit it. You know, right? So we're getting things, that's all. No big deal. But if it's not finally determined, that the process is not going to it's not being finally determined. That means it's not finished.
All right, Mr. Speaker. All right, can we agree to disagree? And we can always ask the legal persons to take a look at it and give some worthy consideration to the point that you raise it.
Thank you, member,
Because
for-
I'm not a lawyer. I can only give you the interpretation I have and the advice I'm given. If you believe your interpretation is better or correct, I will allow them to resolve it. So, but can we move on?
Member for Castries South, can you continue with the
Can I
presentation?
continue? So, Mr. Speaker, I was making the point that the real details would lie in the regulations. Now, let us look at the previous pieces of legislation that existed. And member from Mikusa, I wish you would really listen to me. I don't want for us to have to go through this because you said I said something which I did not say. So here it is. Under the previous legislation, because he raised the question that in this legislation, it is not specific what you're getting. And we're saying to him, the specificity will be in the regulations. In the regulations. Because in the old piece of legislation, it says you will get up to 100%. You will get up to 100% of A, B, C, D. The danger in putting this in the legislation is that the exact quantum you get is not measured by any objective criteria. So if you apply, Mr. Speaker, somebody in cabinet can decide we're going to give you 75% waiver on corporation tax for 10 years. And they're fully entitled to do so. If somebody else apply and not favored by cabinet, they can decide they're giving you 25% for 5 years. No, listen. That's why I tell you, listen attentively. Listen attentively. Because there was no transparency in how the previous incentives and concessions were given. It said up to 100%. But please, let me just finish. Can I just ask you, Honorable Member, to let me finish? And then you'll ask whatever question you want, yeah? So, Mr. Speaker, can you ask the Honorable Member to just allow me to finish? So in the previous legislation, the discretion was that of cabinet and no objective criteria. Ladies and gentlemen sit around a table and they just decide, give me 25%, give me 50%. Because there was no objective criteria. And all of us you were in cabinet, we sat. Let me tell you how vulgar and obscene it got. Let me tell you how vulgar and obscene it got. By this very member from Miku South. A particular developer, and everybody will know who, I don't have to mention names, applied for concessions. Concessions were given. When it went to the AG chambers, they said they could not publish it because it was not in keeping with the law. Think about that. And then, you know what they did? Came into this house and amended the law to say that cabinet can give extras if they want to give extras. Tell me about that. That's how vulgar and obscene it became. That cabinet, in its deliberate judgment.
Member for Miku South.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, the member is grossly misleading the House. Okay? If he wants to give that example, the same thing can be said of the economic
No,
fund.
what did no member?
The member is misleading the House
Yes,
because in the incentives, Mr. Speaker, it clearly outlines X number of rooms, X number of level of investment, X number of jobs. That is what establishes
In the
the
legislation,
criteria
that's not
to
true.
determine what incentives a person gets. If in fact cabinet, maybe the cabinet that he was belonging to, wants to go away from that, but the parameters of what incentives to give based on the level of investment, the level of the jobs, and the size of the hotel, all those things are the criteria. That is what I'm looking for. That is what I'm not seeing in the new act. Now, if in fact, Mr. Speaker, that the members have not
Mr.
done that
Speaker,
as yet,
this is
and
not
the
true.
intention to do that, no
Member,
problem.
on a point of order, you stand, you say what the point of order is. You've made your statement, and then you take your seat. Member for Castries South, the member is saying that there are clear parameters as to what level of incentives that a person can
not true.
get. I'm saying what the member is saying, member for Castries South. He's saying that there are clear parameters, and it's not a discretionary issue as it relates to incentives
Mr. Speaker,
from the
I may be wrong, but the staff from the AG Chambers are here and from the Ministry of Tourism. I am not aware of any piece of legislation that says if you create X amount of jobs, you spend X amount of money, this is what you get. I am not familiar with that piece of legislation. I am not. And if the honourable member from Miko South has such legislation, it is his private legislation. This is private legislation. So as far as I know, this is not how it is stated in the TSIA and the TIA. So I don't know where the member from Miko South got that from. But I gave you the example of a developer that was given, and that's fact, incentives that the AG Chambers, whilst he was Prime Minister, said they could not publish it. And that he came to this Honourable House and had an amendment to give Cabinet the right to give extras. I can also tell another developer who was virtually not rejected on most of what he asked for, but he still proceeded with the project, and today he's still trying to get redress because of how he was treated by the last government. And this is what we are going to remove. It's going to be transparent, and it will have an objective criteria. So, in the regulations, Mr. Speaker, that we have shared with the major stakeholders, the regulations. So I can give you an example, Mr. Speaker. Just one example, because it's quite a lengthy document, the regulations. So I'll give you one example. And I want those he's already sent messages to, that we're only giving 50% concessions, to listen carefully as well. Say tourism accommodation. Say a first-time construction of a tourist accommodation and its initial furnishing and equipping. Investment size, up to 5 million. And that's where most St. Lucians would apply for. Across all the incentives, they will get 100%. Import duty, excise duty, VAT, stamp duty, income tax, corporate tax, property tax, vendor tax, withholding tax, they will get 100%. Well, it has various periods, but it's clearly stated. Anybody can invest, know exactly what they will get. Hold on. Now you're changing your story. Let me go on. From $5 million and $1 to 20 million.
Member for Castries South, you have 15 minutes to conclude
Okay,
your
Mr. Speaker.
presentation.
I'll finish by then. So for 5 million to 20 million, import duty 100, excise duty 100, VAT 100, stamp duty 100, income tax 50%. It's not automatic 100. Corporate tax 50%, property tax 50%. Then you go to 20 million plus, import duty 100, excise duty 100, VAT 100, stamp duty 50, income tax 50 up to 15 years. So you have a table that clearly states for each activity, investment activity, not only accommodation, every single investment opportunity is listed there, every single one. We fit the investment size in terms of the quantity, and it states what percentage you will get. And as I stated in my presentation, where you have 50% on the certain of the incentives, you can get the additional ones according to your commitment to certain principles. You understand? It means any investor coming to St. Lucia, any St. Lucian, and may I say, most of the investment opportunities that St. Lucians engage in through our historical data they will maximize incentives and concessions. Okay? But what it does, and where it will eat at the member, is that anybody coming into the country or any St. Lucian investing cannot be discriminated against anymore. It's a transparent, objective criteria of who gets what. You know what it does? And it's a very brave decision for politicians to have made. Very brave. It reduces the discretion of politicians to decide who get incentives and benefits in this country. Which is why in the legislation a decision can be made that a committee in the ministry can decide up to a certain amount the concessions that are granted, because the table will say exactly what you can get. There'll be very little space for discretion. And politicians of this government actually took a decision to outline in a very transparent, open way what are the benefits you will get when you come and invest. Nobody will hold anybody to ransom, nobody will threaten anybody, and nobody will discriminate against anybody in this country when it comes to investment in the tourism sector. And politicians took that decision. I'm not saying there is absolutely no discretion, but the space for discretion is severely minimized. Severely minimized. And I know a piece of legislation like this, a progressive piece of legislation like this, can never be passed by a United Workers' Party government. Never. Because they thrive on discriminating against certain people and favoring others. And if some people don't like me for saying this, I'm sorry, it is the truth. All St. Lucians must feel, regardless of political persuasion, that they are treated fairly and squarely. And these regulations, when they are published, and we still probably have some tidying up to make, we're still getting feedback on some of them, will be a public document and not what that exists right now. So the member doesn't like it. And you have to really reflect on this, Mr. Speaker, that this member, when he wanted to give concessions, he gave beyond what the law said he could give. The AG chambers in his own government said they could not publish it. He came to this house and he did an amendment so that the cabinet can give extras. Think about that abuse of power. This stopped this. This stopped this. So he cannot feel comfortable anymore. So, Honorable Member, we will determine a date by which a new act will come into force, and the minister will sign the order, and the processes will take over. I'm not saying it is a perfect document. I can tell you it's guided by experience and historical data. We may have to amend it, we may have to modify it, but that's the nature of the beast. We try to capture everything for every situation. And you know you will never totally get it that way. Never. So I am prepared to say that the regulations may have to be tweaked along the way until we approximate the very best practice. But this is a good start. And we are removing the stain of the Alan Shastney administration on the investment climate in St. Lucia. So, Mr. Speaker, I think I have dealt with most of the issues. Is there any other issue, Mr. Speaker, you wish me to address? So, in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, let me thank again the staff of the Ministry and of the St. Lucia Tourism Authority and the staff of the Attorney General Chambers. I wish the member from Beaufort South was here today and to hear what he would say about the legislation. He did work with us in an earlier draft and give us some very valuable ideas as to how to improve it, Mr. Speaker. A lot of what we have in there actually, policy positions that he would have stated many years ago. But the staff did a fantastic job. They worked extraordinarily long hours on weekends, Mr. Speaker. Many a times they called me, asked me to bring pizza for them, which I did not always do, Mr. Speaker. But they really worked hard, the AG chambers and the staff, to get this where it is, Mr. Speaker. They were really phenomenal in doing so. And I'm sure when people speak about tourism legislation in the region, St. Lucia will be cited as a best practice model of legislation. And Mr. Speaker, it will be due largely, and I want to be very clear on that, largely to the staff the staff of the ministry and the AG chambers. What we did as cabinet and as minister was to provide general policy direction and tell them where we want the ship to sail. But they were the ones who are guiding it and managing the journey, Mr. Speaker. So I want us to be very appreciative of the work that what they did in this regard, Mr. Speaker. If there are any faults or errors in it, it's my fault and my colleagues, because we did not review it sufficiently to correct them and to guide them, Mr. Speaker. I want St. Lucians to reflect on what we've achieved today, to reflect on what this government has been doing, the Youth Economy Agency, the MSME, Mr. Speaker, and the community tourism, and now this, as very clear statements of our faith and belief in the capacity of St. Lucians to achieve. We believe that our people, if given the support, if given the legislative framework, if given the financial support, and if provided with the leadership, can achieve great things. We're not a large country with huge natural resources, but we are determined people. We've produced among the best thinkers in the world, 2 Nobel laureates. We've produced many other outstanding technocrats throughout the region and internationally. We can achieve. We must have the faith and the belief that as a people we can do so. And the role of this government is to provide that support, provide that leadership, so our people can be bold enough to take the steps to achieve. This piece of legislation is another step in doing so, to tell our people that the tourism industry, the engine of this economy, the economic activity that brings in the most money into this country, can belong to them. It can belong to them. And this offers them the opportunity to do so. The assistance we give for the Youth Economy Agency, the assistance for the Community Tourism Agency, what we're doing in sports, the semi-professional league, the high performance center, all those things are about saying to our people, you can do it. And the role of government is to create the enabling environment for you to succeed. Have faith, seize the opportunities, and let us make St. Lucia a much better place, because we can do it. And we would have differences. I think today I clearly stated that there's a sharp divide between the United Workers' Party, the opposition, and ourselves. There's a sharp, sharp divide in how we see St. Lucians and how we approach the development of this country. So, Sapaflabo? So, Mr. Speaker, as I end this debate, and I ask that we move on to committee stage, Mr. Speaker, I really want to tell you that I am proud of what we have done. And I look forward to St. Lucians making the best opportunity and the best use of the work that has been done. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, the question is that the Tourism Development Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many have that opinion, say aye. As many have a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to facilitate inclusive, resilient, and sustainable tourism development, to provide for administration by the department responsible for tourism development, tourism certification, incentives for tourism investments, including specialized support areas, additional incentives and incentives for resilience, the imposition, collection, remittance, assessment and payment of a tourism levy, the establishment of the Tourism Development Fund and Tourism Information Database, monitoring and for related matters.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Aye. Part 1. Clause 3 to 38.
Administration.
Part 1, clauses 3 to 38 stands part of the bill. Part 2, clauses 39 to 61.
Tourism certificates.
Part 2, clauses 39 to 61 stands part of the bill. Part 3, clauses 62 to 75.
Social partnership.
Part 2, clauses 62 to 75 stands part of the bill. Part 4, clauses 76 to 98.
Incentives, additional incentives, incentives for resilience and tax credits.
Part 4, clauses 76 to 98 stands part of the bill. Part 5, clauses 99 to 123.
Tourism levy.
Part 5, clauses 99 to 123 stands part of the bill. Part 6, clauses 124 to 135.
Review committee.
Part 6, clauses 124 to 135 stands part of the bill. Part 7, clauses 136 to 145.
Tourism Development Fund.
Part 7, clauses 136 to 145 stands part of the bill. Part 8, clauses 146 to 150.
Tourism Information Database and Monitoring.
Part 8, clauses 146 to 150 stands part of the bill. Part 9, clauses 151 to clause 157.
Miscellaneous.
Part 9, clause 151 to 157 stands part of the bill. Schedule 1.
Section 2 definitions.
Schedule 1 stands part of the bill. Schedule 2.
Section 2 incentives, additional incentives, and additional incentives for resilience.
Schedule 2 stands part of the bill. Schedule 3.
Section 2 tourism sectors.
Schedule 3 stands part of the bill. Schedule 4.
Section 143 oath or affirmation of secrecy.
Schedule 4 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title and commencement.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Honorable members, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many have that opinion, say aye. As many have a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable members, I beg to report that the Tourism Development Bill went through committee stage without amendments. Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Tourism, Investment, Creative Industries, Culture and Information.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honorable members, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Tourism Development Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many have that opinion, say aye. As many have a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. Ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This Act may be cited as the Tourism Development Act 2024. This Act shall come into force on a date to be fixed by the Minister by order published in the Gazette.
Member for Miku South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure exactly what point of order, but a point of order nonetheless.
A point of order, member for Miku South.
On hallucination, Mr. Speaker, to you.
A point of
hallucination.
A point of elucidation, member. What point of elucidation? There is nobody on the floor, member.
I know, Mr. Speaker, but there was an incident that took place this morning, Mr. Speaker. And
no, member.
But, Mr. Speaker, I'm just indulging your patience for a minute, Speaker. It's an important matter. It is a very important matter. An explanation, Mr. Speaker, was given by the Prime Minister this morning with regards to your status. I would like for the Prime Minister to clarify his point, because what he said is not clarification. When you say that somebody is going to provide oversight of a ministry,
Member,
then that means that he is responsible. Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, member for Miku South.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
We did not have a matter dealing with my designation before the House this morning.
We did. I brought it up this morning, Mr. Speaker.
This was not a matter on the other paper that we had before us this morning, member. You mentioned it, and you mentioned it, member. You mentioned it. We allowed you to mention it, and the Prime Minister decided to respond. So but that was not a matter on the order paper.
I'm going to ask, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to ask through you, Mr. Speaker, if the Attorney General, who is here, would opine on the situation. All I'm asking for is clarity, Mr. Speaker, because I'm not going to walk out. What the Prime Minister said does not offer us the clarity, and it needs to be clarified, Mr. Speaker.
Okay.
Otherwise, what has been said in the press release and what was said by the Prime Minister can be deemed that you are in fact the acting minister right now, and therefore would have consequences to this session. That's all I'm asking, Mr. Speaker.
Member, I will answer to the member of for Miku South. It is not the norm to when we get to this stage of the House to deal with matters of that nature. However, for your own edification, I think it is important that I inform you and other persons who are listening that I have not been sworn in as a minister. I do not hold any ministerial portfolio. I am still the Deputy Speaker of this House, and I operate as the Deputy Speaker of this House. So I hope with this information that you feel better about what happened this morning, member.
I feel much obliged, Mr. Speaker. It would still have been better, Mr. Speaker, if that came from the Prime Minister himself.
Thank you very much, member. Thank you. Member for Castries East.
I want to take this opportunity to wish the people of St. Lucia, although I'll do it for national address, I want to wish them happy independence. Tomorrow, the President of Guyana is going to be our guest. We're very honored to have him, and he'll be here tomorrow at a joint session. I invite all members to attend this joint session. And I really wish, Mr. Speaker, that in the observance of our 45th anniversary of independence, we can have a level of unity, a level of togetherness, a level of truthfulness, Mr. Speaker. So I want to wish you and your family, I want to wish all the staff, the Attorney General and the staff, Mr. Speaker, and our guests of the Ministry of Tourism and the police, I want to wish them a pleasant and happy independence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Castries South.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg that this House stands adjourned sine die, sine die.
Thank you, member. Just to reiterate, the Prime Minister has just reminded us tomorrow of the joint sitting of the Senate and the House of Assembly, tomorrow, February 21st, 2024, and this joint sitting is to receive a message from His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Ifan Ali, President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, on the occasion of our 45th anniversary of St. Lucia's independence. Honorable members, at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Honorable members, the question is that this House do stand adjourned sine die. I now put the question. As many of that opinion, say aye. As many have a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting adjourned.
Well, welcome back. There we have it. The House of Assembly standing adjourned for today, the 20th of February. It was an all-day session and the House was suspended and resumed at 3:45. What we've witnessed today is the passage of the Tourism Development Act 2024. It was in fact presented by the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Tourism, Investment, Creative Industries, Culture and Information. The bill centered, according to the Minister, on the transformation of the tourism industry. And in his words, he said that what this bill sought to do was to ensure that more St. Lucians participate and own and become owners in the tourism industry. He said the bill was intended to redesign, transform and reinvigorate the tourism industry. The minister also said it was his hope that more St. Lucians would come in and partake and invest in the tourism industry. There was some debate and queries from the leader of the opposition member for Miku South concerning incentives, and the language surrounding incentives. There was some back and forth, and the minister yielded to say that he would have his legal team or lawyers look into the wording of the particular aspect that was of some bother to the member for Miku South. But all in all, it was an interesting debate. The member called that passage of that bill groundbreaking, revolutionary and transformative. Earlier in the day, there was a resolution that was moved to exempt the value-added tax VAT on some sporting-related equipment, to include lights and lighting infrastructure. There was also the removal of VAT on goods imported by a private sector, sporting organization or an individual on certain sporting activities, including basketball, bridge, cricket, cycling, football, hockey, horse racing, etc. This morning when they started, the well wishes were sent out to the member for Babono, who is not well. The Prime Minister announced, and several members of Parliament on both sides of the House offered well wishes to the Minister. But all in all, a spirited debate, and what the members on the government side are calling truly a groundbreaking piece of legislation, the passage of the Tourism Development Act 2024. And it was announced that the act will come into effect on a date which is yet to be determined. So there we have it. Thank you so much, viewers, for staying with us throughout the proceedings here today. On behalf of the team, the technical team, on behalf of my co-host Michael Gasper, and the entire team at the Government Information Service, I'm Virgil Leonti saying goodbye.
St. Lucia. All roads lead to Soufriere on Thursday, February 22nd to celebrate the 45th independence anniversary of our beloved country. Ring in 45 at midnight.